This is Jocko Underground podcast number 49, sitting with Echo Charles. Wanted to talk about a little something called psychological reactance. Now, this is something that you know, that I know, that I've known about for a long time, but I haven't heard it. I didn't know this term. What this is the definition is, quote, unpleasant motivation, arousal, or reaction to offers, people, rules, or regulations that threaten or eliminate specific behavior freedoms, end quote. So what does that mean? What that means is that people don't like to feel their freedom of choice is being threatened in any way. And what you have heard me say for years, and this is just something I would throw out there as if it was a fact, and it kind of now is, is you hear me say people don't like to have things imposed upon them. You don't want to impose your plan on them. You don't want to force things on people. There's a psychological phenomenon that backs up that, quote, feeling that I talk about. This happens when you know when someone says, hey, you can't do that, and it makes you want to do it a little bit. Yeah. Right? We were talking about something earlier today. Yeah. I was like, oh, someone's telling me to do something, telling us to do something, and that makes us, both of us, feel like, oh, we just won't do it just to spite them.
Yeah. Or at the very least, don't tell me what not to do.
Very
like you're
least.
Mad that you can't do it, even though you never wanted to do it.
Right. That right there is reactance. That's psychological reactance. When someone says, hey, you can't do that, and makes you want to do it more. And this is because, in my opinion, humans don't like to be controlled. Right? Humans don't like to be controlled. We tend to want to do the opposite of what someone is imposing on us. This is, by the way, where the idea of reverse psychology, which everyone's heard of, plays on. That's the idea that it plays on. Like, oh, you know, hey, Echo, you're not allowed to sweep up in here. No, oh, watch me. I'm going to sweep up, the Tom Sawyer, example of, you guys can't paint the fence, No, yes, we can. Okay. Yeah, okay, fine. So that's what reverse psychology works on. It works on reactance. There's 4 elements to reactance. Or 4 stages maybe. Perceived freedom, like this is what I think I should be allowed to do. Threat to that freedom. Then you get the reactance, which then provides restoration of the freedom. A couple interesting indicators. The more certain of the freedom, the harder the reactance. So it's something you definitely think you should be able to do, and I told you not to do it, you're going to have even more reactance to it. The higher importance of the freedom, the more stringent the reactance. And here's an interesting point. They tie this to the fact that if I take one freedom away from you, you psychologically think if you take that one, you're probably going to take more. It's almost like a psychological slippery slope that we're getting into. Mm-hmm. So it's important to understand this. It's important to understand this for me to be able to sort of quantify this idea that I've been expressing for years, which is people don't like being told what to do. People don't like having ideas imposed upon them. People don't like having plans imposed upon them. And so this is where it comes from. We all, as humans, have a psychological reactance. We don't want to be told what to do. We don't want to have our freedom of choice controlled in any way. So then the question becomes, how do you overcome this, right? Well, this is, again, something else I talk about all the time. Using the indirect approach. Making something someone's idea, right? I don't push the idea down their throat. I ask earnest questions to get them to say, oh, well, this, Jocko, I think we should do this right now. Oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Now it's been your idea. Now you want to go and execute it, which is awesome. Saying something like, hey, Echo, here's the situation we're in. I think we should go in this direction, but it's your call. Right? Now I give you that little bit of freedom. You go, you know what? Here's what I want to do. And it allows you a little bit more freedom to think through the issue. Whereas if I say, Echo, you need to do this right now, you're automatically against it. And And you might resist it. You might say, I'm not going to do that. Whereas if I say, hey, man, here's the situation. It's your call what we do. And it opens up your mind to actually do the right thing. And what this reinforces is the fact that, once again, the indirect approach may seem like the harder thing to do. It may seem like the less efficient thing to do. But this is another reason why the shortest distance between 2 points is not always a straight line. In fact, that works on a piece of paper in geometry class in 6th grade. But in the real world, the closest distance between 2 points is rarely, if ever, a straight line. And the indirect approach is usually better.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, the indirect, you go around the mountains, kind of like, okay, so I was going up to Big Bear, coming back, and my son, he's 5. He goes, why do these roads have to be so windy? Because they're windy.
Yeah, they are.
And technically, it's not a bad question. It's like, yeah, why isn't it? Why is it so windy? So you kind of look.
Did you say, look at the freaking cliff, bro?
No, and I for sure didn't say it like that.
Okay.
But I did say, however, I was like, oh, because they got to go with the contour of the mountains. Otherwise, like, how are you going to make the road? Unless you made one huge bridge or something like this, but that would take a long time and all this stuff. I says, but if you pay attention, this makes the most sense because you got to go look where we're going. We're always next to the mountain. Look, and you see him, and for a long time, he's just looking at every curve, and it started to make sense to him. And it's true. It's kind of the same thing, where it's like, yeah, in a vacuum or in 6th grade geometry, whatever. Yeah, it's a straight line, but in real life, it doesn't work like that because there's all these other factors.
Yep. That's kind of one of the examples I'll use when I'm talking to clients and trying to explain the indirect approach to them. You know, if you've got to get from point A to point B, hey, the easiest way is a straight line, right? Yes, of course. Well, what if there's a river?
Yeah.
What if there's 2 ridge lines that you have to pass over? And if you just go a little bit off course, you can go over here into a nice field, which doesn't have the river running through it, and it doesn't have any ridge lines. And instead of it taking you, 10 hours to get across the ridge lines, across the river, you can just get there in 3 hours because you can go fast. You're not gaining and losing elevation twice to get over ridgelines.
And risking some detrimental stuff, by the way.
Yeah. So very interesting. The indirect approach, I'm still trying. That is a little excerpt of what we are doing on the Jocko Underground podcast. So if you want to continue to listen, go to jockounderground.com and subscribe. And we're doing this to mitigate our reliance on external platforms so we are not subject to their control. And we're doing it so we can give you more control, more interaction, more direct connections, better communications with us, strengthen this legion of troopers that are in the game with us. So thank you. It's jockounderground.com. It costs $8.18 a month. And if you can't afford to support us, we can still support you. Just email assistance@jockounderground.com and we'll get you taken care of. Until then, we will see you mobilized underground.